Hello guys and welcome to my new video, and today we'll be looking at Holy Paladins in patch 8.3. This is going to be a video guide for raiding and Mythic Plus. This is mainly going to be about raiding, but I want to cover Mythic Plus, but I don't want this video to be too long. But generally speaking, we'll be covering things like talent builds for raids and Mythic Plus. We'll be looking at gearing, and gearing is going to include things like Azerite, things like stat priorities for all the content that you want your paladin to do. We'll be looking at playstyle and how the playstyle changed in patch 8.3, because now Glimmer has an 8 cap. How is that going to impact you when you use your Holy Avenger, when you use your wings? What kind of priority, or what is the spell priority to be used in raids and Mythic Plus? We'll look at that, and at the end we'll look at some of the corruption items that are going to give you some really good results in raids and Mythic Plus scenarios as well. Generally speaking, it is a great time to be Holy Paladin. Holy Paladin is one of the strongest raid healers in Ny'alotha. You've probably seen Holy Paladins in a lot of these world first skills, and Holy Paladins are climbing and slowly and surely becoming one of the top healers in Mythic Plus. So if you look at patch 8.3, it's probably one of the best times to be Holy Paladin. So let's get started with the talent setup. So the talent setup for Holy Paladin in raids is not very different from what it was in Eternal Palace. You still have the same Glimmer of Light build that's extremely strong. Glimmer is across the board the best playstyle to be used in raids and Mythic Plus, and you should try and get 3 Glimmer Azerite pieces as soon as you can. If you do lack that helm piece, you'll notice that engineering gives you helm piece, and also the fact that Ny'alotha raid bosses, every single Azerite piece is gonna have Glimmer on it. Blizzard knows that Glimmer is the playstyle, and they made it easy for you to gear. So in terms of talents, it's the same thing. Crusader Smite, Crusader Strike reduces the cooldown of Holy Shock and Light of Dawn by 1.5 seconds. So this is what makes you this melee healer, and you start hitting, you know, the enemy or the boss with Crusader Strikes, because you want to reduce the cooldown of your main abilities, and that is Holy Shock and Light of Dawn. So that's basically your bread and butter. It's very important to create these crazy burst windows with your cooldowns, and I'll talk about this. So increases the range of your heals and the reach of Mastery Lightbringer by 50% for 10 seconds. Meaning that, again, if you're familiar with Holy Paladin Mastery, you know it's all about staying close to the people, and if you're close to them, you're going to heal for more. With Rule of Law, even if the person is staying a bit further away, you can activate Rule of Law and your Mastery is still going to do a lot of healing. And I'll talk about this later on. So Rule of Law, Fist of Justice, Devotion Aura is the one that's used in progression. It doesn't show up on healing meters, but it's extremely important. People who use Aura of Mercy are usually trying to look better on healing meters, because it's the only thing that shows up on healing meters. So generally speaking, progression, Devotion Aura is the way to go. Holy Avenger, Sanctified Wrath, and Divine Purpose. These are complete lock-ins for a Holy Paladin in raid situations. If we look at Holy Paladin in Mythic Plus situations, it's very similar, with maybe the exception of Unbreakable Spirit. Reduces the cooldown of your Divine Shield, so Bubble, Divine Protection, and Lay Your Hands by 30%. So you'll be able to use those abilities more often in the Mythic Plus environment. Rule of Law is not as important, and maybe in tier 45 you still have a lot of options here. A lot of people do go with Blinding Light just to have an additional disruption ability, and that's about it. Everything else is still going to be staying the same for Holy Paladin in Mythic Plus. Now let's talk about Holy Paladin gearing in raid situations, and let's start off with things like essences. Now this is probably the most common essence build. You'll have Vision of Perfection Major, and this is used in Mythic Plus and raid situations. It just procs your wings more often, or has a chance of proccing wings, and we'll talk about a certain Azerite build that makes it even stronger. Conflict of Strife is really important. Again, you don't have that many options as Holy Paladin in raid situations. No, you don't have as many good essences, because you have Conflict of Strife, you have Unwavering Ward, which is used by a lot of people because it gives you this absorb. In raid situations, it can account for this amount of healing. And then the last choice, honestly, is going to be Well of Existence. But I feel you can change this a lot of the times. Well of Existence, for me personally, does around 2% of my total healing, which is not that great. I can't swap it for Crucible of Flame. And Crucible of Flame will generally, for me, will do about 1% of healing, but will do a lot more in terms of DPS. So if you're looking to push your DPS a bit more and help your guild progress a certain boss, go with Crucible of Flame. If you just want the HPS, go with Well of Existence, and that should be completing your essence choices as a Holy Paladin in raid environments. Vision, Conflict, Unwavering, Well of Existence for HPS, Crucible for HPS and DPS. So in terms of Holy Paladin Mythic Plus essence setup, it's kind of similar. You'll have Vision of Perfection here, but a lot of the times, if you want extra DPS, people are looking at Formless Void, which means that if you use it as a major, you're able to copy other DPS essences. And a lot of the times, if someone is running Focusing Iris, you as a Holy Paladin equip Formless Void, copy Focusing Iris, and then Annihilate Trash Bag. So if you need extra DPS, Formless Void. If you need extra healing / DPS, Vision of Perfection, again, it can be wasted on certain trash packs, but those are probably the most popular pulls or most popular essences at this given point. In terms of minor ones, Conflict and Strife, again, is one of the most popular choices, both in raids and Mythic Plus. You can see that it is a PvP essence. You might not enjoy trying to get it, but Conflict is definitely worth for your Holy Paladin. And then you'll have a new essence, and that's Spirit of Preservation. Again, I wish I had rank 3 of this because it's extremely strong in terms of providing or filling the gaps of your class that's lacking single target. And a lot of classes that lack single target will use this because it really helps you with that tank healing. So for example, rank 2, every 5 seconds gain Devout Spirit causing your next flash of light. It's going to be different for other healers. To heal for an additional amount, stacking up to 5 times. And the rank 3, for each Devout Spirit consumed, increases critical strike chance of your next flash of light within 15 seconds by 20%. This is insanely good for Holy Paladin because Holy Paladin does lack that single target healing in Mythic Plus environments, especially when you don't have your cooldowns. So this will help you to keep your tank up when you used up your wings, when you used up your Holy Avenger. Again, very strong choice. And the last thing would probably be Crucible of Flame for that healing and DPS in Mythic Plus content. Now let's go for Holy Paladin raid gearing that includes Azerite. You'll probably notice that Azerite for Holy Paladin in raids is going to drop Glimmer of Light, and Glimmer of Light is the most important part. You want to have 3 of these. You want to have as many as possible, and that is maximum of 3. So you want to have Glimmer on every single piece of your gear. It's very, very important because basically the whole playstyle revolves around you having these Glimmer pieces. And after that, this is the raid build that I've had a lot of success with, and that is Avenging Might. So Avenger's Might, while Avenging Wrath is active, your mastery is increased by a certain amount. And I have 2 of these traits, which means when I activate my wings, there is a ton of mastery gained from this trait, meaning that a lot of Nihilote bosses are going to be stacked, and my cooldowns are going to heal for so much when combined with Rule of Law, and we'll come back to that later on. This playstyle has seen a lot of success for a lot of Holy Paladins in raid situation. Besides that, you will have another trait that's very, very popular in raids, Heart of Darkness, if you don't have that Avenger's Might. But we'll talk about this later on. So again, you want to have triple Glimmer, that's the most important. And besides that, you'll probably want to gamble your shoulders, because the shoulders are one of the easiest ways to pick up a certain Azerite that is almost mandatory, and that is Light's Decree. That is going to increase your Avenging Wrath's duration by 5 seconds. This is very, very important for a lot of people to pick up, and you'll be using your Titan Residum to gamble shoulders and try and get either Lockjaw shoulders, or there's another shoulders, Tank Buster shoulders, who also have, they're from Mechagon, who also have Light's Decree. In order to equip this, you need to swap to Retribution, click Light's Decree, swap back to Holy, and get your Glimmer of Light. And this is going to be one of the most popular builds, or Azerite builds, in Nihilote right now. Triple Glimmer with Light's Decree, and possibly multiple pieces of Avenger's Might for that sweet mastery gain. In terms of trinkets, honestly, you can never really go wrong with the Alchemy Stone, because it's a free trinket that you get, and if you're unlucky with trinkets overall, Alchemy Stone is still a very good option, even for Holy Paladins who don't need that extra mana from those potions. But besides that, you will have a couple of bosses in Nihilote raid that will drop you a nice pieces of trinkets, and that is the first boss, which is the Humming Black Dragon Scale, used by a lot of Holy Paladins if they don't have it. This is going to be one of your best trinkets if you don't have that Alchemy Stone as well. And if you kind of get lucky, and I mean lucky, you can pick up the Haste Trinket from Raden, Vita Charged Titan Shard, which will give you haste. It'll also give you haste to you and party members, and by party members I mean the actual 5 people in your party in a raid setup. If you're in group 4, only group 4 is going to get that additional haste. But overall, this is a strong trinket, and I was kind of lucky because I managed to get this trinket with Leech on it, which probably means I'm going to be using this trinket for the rest of the progression in Nihilote, because Leech is extremely strong. So now let's go to the stat priority for Holy Paladin in raid situations. And there is a lot of different information out there. I'm going to be talking about my results, what I found for my Holy Paladin to be very strong, and generally speaking, the stat priority would be something like haste, mastery, versatility, and then crit. And there's a reason for this. First of all, generally speaking, the difference between all of these stats is very small, and even picking up the highest item level gear is not going to be that bad. At the end of the day, this is my stats, and I'm seeing a little bit of a bump towards haste. Haste still feels as one of my best stats, but not as much as it was in Eternal Palace. In Eternal Palace, you didn't have a cap on Glimmer, and haste was insanely good. But I still feel haste is a little bit better than everything else, but not by a large margin. Mastery is very strong because of the fact, the way that mastery works, you're going to be healing more when you're closer to members. Nihilota, there's a lot of stacking out there. This is the reason why Resto Shamans is so strong. Resto Shamans are great at that stack healing, and Holy Paladin Mastery is becoming even stronger because you're stacked for a lot of those fights. So Mastery is still very strong. Then I'm seeing versatility, and crit being one of the lowest ones. I'm only running with very small amount of crit, because a lot of the times Infusion of Light, and this is the main reason that makes crit strong in 5-man situations. Infusion of Light, every time you crit with your Holy Shock, you're going to get an improved version of your Flash of Light or Holy Light when you cast it next. But the fact is, in raid situations, you barely do that. You should not be afraid to waste your Infusion of Light procs in raid situations. This is why when I go to 5-man stat priority, it's a lot different. You'll probably see something like Critical Strike being the best, haste being probably the second best, then you'll probably see versatility and mastery being as one of the worst stats. And there's a reason for that, because in 5-man situations, again, you want to use those Infusion of Light procs. You want your Holy Shock to proc, and then you can see for the next couple of seconds, reduces the cast time of your next Holy Light, and increases the healing of your next Flashlight. This means that when you don't have those cooldowns as Holy Paladin in Mythic Plus situations, you can keep up your tank. And on top of that, with the Essence, Spirit of Preservation, it's making a single target stronger. So that's why crit is really important. Again, the cap on crit is around 40%, because you have to remember, you get extra 30% crit from Holy Shock, and on top of that, your Avenging Wrath or Wings also give you 30%. So you get 30, 30, 60, and you have 40% left for that 100% crit chance on Holy Shock, which means that people do try to get close to 40% crit in Mythic Plus situations because of this, because they want that Infusion of Light at all times. And the reason why Mastery is so low, if you're looking at pure healing throughput, Mastery is actually very good stat even in Mythic Plus situations. It can add a lot to your healing, but one of the main reasons to play Holy Paladin in Mythic Plus is that damage. Mastery contributes 0 towards your damage output, and if you're playing Holy Paladin in Mythic Plus, you can notice how much damage Holy Paladins can output, because you can use your Holy Shock offensively and defensively, your Consecrate, you have Judgment traits or Judgment Azerite traits, which are very strong. So this is why a lot of Holy Paladins don't tend to get a lot of Mastery. They want to get more crit, haste, and then maybe verse, and keep Mastery away, because they want to get that huge overall DPS at the end of the dungeon. So let's go to the most fun part of the video, and that is the playstyle for Holy Paladin in raid situations. And generally speaking, the spell priority for Holy Paladin in raids is very, very simple. So let's consider spell priority without cooldowns. You basically have Light of Dawn and you have Holy Shock. And both of these spells, their cooldown gets reduced due to Crusader Smite. So Crusader Strike, Crusader Smite talent, Crusader Strike reduces the cooldown of Holy Shock and Light of Dawn by 1.5 seconds. So the general consensus is you make sure you use your Holy Shock, you make sure you use Light of Dawn, and then use your Crusader Strike to try and reduce the cooldown of Holy Shock and Light of Dawn. You don't want to fall in this situation where you might have Holy Shock on cooldown, and then you don't have Light of Dawn on cooldown, but you keep using Crusader Strike. You're wasting the cooldown for your Light of Dawn, because Light of Dawn wasn't on cooldown. So you kind of want to make sure Holy Shock, Light of Dawn is used, then Crusader Strike, Holy Shock, you want to use up Light of Dawn, and you want to make sure that these two spells are on cooldown when you're using Crusader Strike. Also, there is another thing, you don't want to use, for example, you don't want to use Crusader Strike when your Holy Shock is like 1.5 seconds left on its cooldown. Because you have to remember there is global cooldown attached to it. Every spell that you use is going to have this initial cooldown to it where you can't cast the next spell. This global cooldown is affected by haste. So generically speaking, people will tell you, if you have 1.5 seconds left on Holy Shock, don't use Crusader Strike, because that will get eliminated by the global cooldown and you won't get any value out of it. So you want to have Holy Shock a little bit longer on cooldown before you want to use your Crusader Strike. But that does change based on the amount of haste that you have. And that is a general consensus. Holy Shock, Light of Dawn, Crusader Strike. Again, I should have made sure that my Light of Dawn was on cooldown. I'm getting these Divine Purpose procs, which gives me free Light of Dawns or Holy Shocks. So you also have to keep in mind how they're going to proc. Now, when you use cooldowns, the priority changes a little bit. So overall, if you combine, and I'm gonna go through two different schools of thought here, because I went through a lot of logs. I wanted to see what other Holy Paladins are using. I wanted to see what I'm using and things like that. And there is two different ways of popping cooldowns. And one of the most simple ones that was used in Eternal Palace is Holy Avenger and Wings, and in that order. In that specific order, Holy Avenger and Wings, because you want to make sure you have the highest uptime of Wings. And after this, because of what Holy Avenger and Wings do, they reduce the cooldown of Holy Shock, they increase the critical strike chance and things like that. You want to go the whole style of Holy Shock, Crusader Strike, Holy Shock, Crusader Strike, Holy Shock, Crusader Strike. It's basically, you're able to completely eliminate the cooldown of Holy Shock with one Crusader Strike. And you're able to get as many glimmers out as possible. Again, you can only get 8 glimmers at this given point. So how did the healing change with this glimmer cap? And there is a lot of differences now, because previously, a lot of the times people will still use Holy Avenger and Wings, and they'll try and apply as many glimmers as they can, even before damage happened. And when the damage hit, they would click Holy Shock on somebody new, and all of the people with Glimmer on them will get healed, and you'll get this big burst healing. Now I feel a lot of the times people will try to use their cooldowns when there is damage, when there is someone to heal. A lot of the times you'll have an option of, hey, I have a Glimmer on this person, but they're around 20 or 30% HP. Or I have another person who doesn't have Glimmer, but they're at 100% HP. And at this given point in patch 8.3, it's not that bad to override an existing Glimmer knowing that you're going to heal them because they need healing, rather than just applying Glimmer just to apply Glimmer and they don't need any healing at all. So the general consensus I feel right now is you use your cooldowns and you heal the people that need healing. Don't feel bad about overriding Glimmer. It's not that bad. You can only get 8 of them. At the same time, it's becoming harder and harder to apply Glimmers on bosses, because you know that's one Glimmer that's not used on healing. So a lot of the paladins might be thinking twice before applying Glimmer on a boss, because that takes up that 8 Glimmer spot. At the same time, if you're about to apply Glimmer on the 9th person, the person that's about to lose their Glimmer, they're still going to get that Glimmer healing before it gets removed from them. So that's what I mean. It's not that bad to override Glimmer. You might be using cooldowns when there's actually healing needed. You want to use your cooldowns when you want to heal people, when you want your Holy Shock to bring them to full HP. Now, the second school of thought in terms of using your cooldowns, and a lot of Holy Paladins are trying to use this right now. I've seen a bit of this in logs and things like that, but I feel it works even better if you have this specific Light's Decree Azerite trait, which increases the duration of your Avenging Wrath. So let's say you have it. You don't have to have it to use it, but I feel it's a lot easier. What some Holy Paladins do, if there is a moderate amount of damage happening right now, but they know there's going to be some insane burst healing needed in, let's say, the next 10 seconds, the next 5 seconds, they'll use something like this. They'll pop their Wings only, and then they'll use their Holy Avenger after around 10 seconds. Because you have to remember, Wings with your Lockjaw Shoulders, with your Light's Decree, around 30 seconds duration. Your Holy Avenger duration is 20 seconds. So what you do is you pop your Wings for those 10 seconds, you apply as many Glimmers as you can, then when you have 20 seconds left on your Wings, you pop Holy Avenger. So you still have your Wings and Holy Avenger overlapping, you still have that pure 2 cooldown strength, but you already have a lot of Glimmers applied because you used the Wings a little bit earlier. So it's something like this. You pop your Wings, you go your Holy Shock, Crusader Strike, Holy Shock, Crusader Strike, Holy Shock, Crusader Strike. You try and get 8 Glimmers out because that's the cap. Crusader Strike, Holy Shock, and then you pop your Holy Avenger. And now you have your Wings and Holy Avenger, and every time you're going to try and heal the people who have, low HP, because your Holy Avenger increases your Holy Shock healing by tons, you're also going to be splash healing the people with Glimmer because you already applied this. So there is two different schools of thought. You either use your cooldowns all together, Holy Avenger and Wings, or Wings, apply Glimmers, and then when you have around 20 seconds left on your Wings, you pop Holy Avenger so you can have those two cooldowns intersected or overlapping together. Again, this is going to depend on the damage patterns of the boss. I do recommend people to try out both styles and see what works for you, to see what you're gonna get the best results from. I have to tell you as well that the stat or spell priority does change when you use your cooldowns. When you have your Holy Avenger and Wings are active at the same time, I mentioned before, Holy Shock, Crusader Strike, Holy Shock, Crusader Strike, so your Light of Dawn kind of falls behind. It's not as important to use Light of Dawn because you want to make sure you get as many Holy Shocks out there. You want to make sure you get those 8 Glimmers, and your Holy Shock is going to account for a lot of your healing. So Light of Dawn does fall in priority, and you only really want to use Light of Dawn when you have your Holy Shock and Crusader Strike on cooldown or not available. Once you don't have any cooldowns, it goes back to the same priority. You want to make sure, again, I got the proc here, you want to make sure that you have that Holy Shock, Light of Dawn, and Crusader Strike. And the only time that you're really going to use your Flash of Light when you don't have your cooldowns is when you're Holy Shock, Light of Dawn, and you don't have any Crusader Strike charges left anymore. This is the only time you're ever going to use Flash of Light, because I had nothing available. And preferably, you will have that Infusion of Light proc as well, which is going to make your Flashlight a bit stronger. This is why crit is not as good for raiding Holy Paladin, because you're going to be wasting a lot of that Infusion of Light procs when you raid as a Holy Paladin. So keep this in mind. Again, let me know how you feel about these different cooldown usages. But I wanted to touch up on the build that I've been using a lot with Holy Avenger and Wings. I mentioned before I had an Azerite build with double Avenger's Might, which means that I'm getting a tons of mastery when I use my Wings, which is insanely strong. And I had to mention that if you're running Vision of Perfection, if you get that proc of Wings, you also get, with Wings, this Avenger's Might. So that means that if you get some lucky Vision of Perfection procs, you're getting so much mastery. Like, look at my mastery right now. I'm running with 36% mastery. If I activate my Wings, I have 72%. You can see here, and this is going to last me a long time. And the fact is, if I get some of my corruption procs, I have 111% mastery, because my corruption procs are to do with mastery proc. So during my Wings, I have so much mastery, and I also activate my Rule of Law. If I activate my Rule of Law, that means that during my cooldowns, even the people who are standing far away, they're getting the maximum amount of healing. And my mastery is so strong. So I am bursting for so much healing, and a lot of people are using this build right now. And I use this, you could say this is the Wings build, or you could say this is the mastery build, where you're stacking these Avenger's Might, Azerite traits, where you're using Rule of Law, and if you're popping your cooldowns, you're getting insane healing, and if your Vision of Perfection procs, you still get that mastery benefit from that Azerite trait, meaning that just a couple of Holy Shocks are gonna probably top up that person. And it's going to heal for so much, especially because Nihilota is such a stacked raid. I feel this build has seen, or at least I've seen, a lot of nice results personally. So this leads me to the corruption section for Holy Paladins, and it's going to be very different for raids and Mythic Plus. Let's start with raids first. Again, Leech corruption, which I don't have any of it right now, is very strong for every healer, because Leech, generally speaking, is just a very good stat. Anything with Leech is probably gonna make that item one of the biz items, because Leech can be like 3-4 times better than Intellect. It's insanely strong. After that, you're probably looking at something like Void Ritual, and I only have a low level item of this. I have the Wrist. Void Ritual has been doubled. That's right, it's been doubled in the effect, so giving your spells and abilities a chance to increase all secondary stats. All secondary stats are insanely strong for Glimmer of Light Holy Paladin, because Glimmer of Light Holy Paladin doesn't really interact with Intellect that well. So your stat priority for your secondaries is going to be something like, maybe your haste is double or triple the value of Intellect. So all of a sudden Void Ritual stat increase is going to be very strong. So you have something like Leech, you have something like Void Ritual. I have Mastery proc on both of my pieces, and they're extremely strong. I feel this is really strong. You also have things like the Haste proc, the Versatility proc, which are still very decent as well. So those are very good corrupted effects to get for pure healing. But generally speaking, you have Leech, you have Void Ritual, you have that Mastery procs, you have that Haste procs, you have that Versatility procs. For Mythic Plus, it's way different. In Mythic Plus, you want to get more DPS corruptions because, like I mentioned, one of the main reasons to bring a Holy Paladin is their DPS. So all of a sudden you have things like Twilight Devastation. It's extremely strong. You have things like Void Ritual, which are still very strong for Holy Paladin in, you know, in Mythic Plus because it's going to give you secondaries. You don't really want that Mastery proc in Mythic Plus because, like I mentioned, Mastery proc is not going to give you any DPS. So all of a sudden you want to kind of get these pieces, get a secondary build for Mythic Plus as a Holy Paladin that increases your DPS, that gives you good DPS output. So definitely you will need different gear setups for raids and Mythic Plus depending whether you want that pure HPS or whether you want that DPS setup for pushing Mythic Plus or maybe pushing certain bosses. It depends what kind of progression you're doing. But overall, this was my guide for raiding and Mythic Plus. A lot of the things here are backed up by logs. I've looked at other people's logs. I've looked at the different cooldown usage. I've looked at the different Azerite setup. Like I mentioned before, the Azerite setup with the double Avenger's Might is pretty strong. A lot of people might use one Avenger's Might. They might use Heart of Darkness, which is another strong Azerite trait, definitely not to be passed up. So there is still a lot of experimentation, but I feel this Mastery build or this Wings build, where you're building everything on your, you know, Wings cooldown and Rule of Law, and then hoping for those Mastery procs, you're gonna be doing some insane healing. Again, let me know how you feel about this guide. I know it was a bit too long. Let me know if you want me to do more guides. Let me know if you find out a different build for raids on Mythic Plus. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in my next guide.